I've been thinking about how all of this coronavirus is affecting children. My view of emotions is kind of like thinking about a painter's palette. Imagine you're holding a painter's palette in your hand, that sort of circular white piece of plastic or wood or something that has all the different colors on it. So you'd see red and blue and green and yellow, etc. And you could choose from all of those colors to paint your picture. And so the emotional world in each person is like having a palette. And we all have, every human being, we all have the same basic palette of human emotions. So we all sometimes feel sadness or joy or excitement or anger or fear or any of the numbers of emotions that there are to feel. Now, some of us might feel some of them more than others. Some of us might have learned tools to learn how to deal with some of these emotions. But nevertheless, there's not a person that doesn't understand happiness or doesn't understand fear or has never felt sadness or has never felt frustration or things like that. We all have that same basic palette of human emotions, and that includes children. And sometimes we think that children aren't part of this, that they don't have those kinds of emotions, or that they don't understand what is going on. The fact is, children do feel all of these things, and children do understand some of what is going on, particularly if you've been talking about this virus in your home, or if you've had the news on, or if they have been talking to their friends, or if they're older, looking at the internet and things like that. Children really do listen and pick up on a lot of things. So I think that the first step to dealing with children is to listen to them. Ask them some questions. What are you hearing about this virus? Now, whether they're 10 years old or 18 years old, they're hearing something about it. Now, of course, if they're 3 and 4 years old, they're probably not hearing anything about this, and you can effectively shield them from this kind of information. And you don't want to be showing them, even 3 and 4 year olds, you don't want to be showing them a tremendous amount of fear, because if they see that their parents are afraid or their grandparents are afraid, then they're going to feel like nobody can protect them. But if they're older than that, say 7, 8, 9 and up, you can ask them, what are you hearing about this coronavirus? And then just listen to what they're bringing to you. Maybe they're hearing that it's not that big of a deal and that people will take care of it and doctors and nurses are working on it. Or maybe they're hearing, or they're interpreting, right or wrong, good or bad, they're interpreting that this is the end of the world and everybody around them is going to die, including themselves and their parents and everybody they love. Kids sometimes have a skewed perception of what's going on because they're getting bits of information, but not the whole story. So listen to what they already believe about this, and then you can know where to start and how to talk with them about some things. And you might tell them something like, there's this disease going on, kind of like how we can catch a cold from one another. People are very much working on it right now, and it won't last forever. And chances are that most people are going to be just fine, but we do need to be careful right now. We need to make sure that we stay away from other people right now. You might even say to them, I know it makes you sad that you can't play with your friends, or you might really miss school right now, or maybe you feel afraid. I've noticed that you've seemed anxious lately or scared lately. But then reassure them, well, from my tradition as a Christian, I would reassure my kids there is a God, and God loves you and cares for you, and eventually this will all work out and things will be okay. You can reassure them also that you, as an adult, are doing the best thing to protect yourself at this time as well, that you are taking the precautions, that you know it's serious. Because, see, in a family system, if somebody seems to not be carrying anxiety at an anxious time at all, if somebody is just saying, oh, there's nothing to worry about, then one member of that system, and it's often a child, they feel like they have to be the symptom bearer for that entire system. So they have to carry all of the anxiety and watch out for everybody because nobody else seems to be doing it. But if they hear a parent say, I know it's a serious thing, and I know we have to be really careful, and I'm taking good care of myself and you, then they hear you're taking it seriously so they can relax. They don't need to be the symptom bearer of being careful and even of being anxious because you say, I know it's a big deal. Now, don't show them that you're terrified. That'll just terrify them. But say, I know it's a big deal. And so I'm being really careful and taking good care of myself and my whole family, if you're the mom or the dad or the grandparent of that person. Now, sometimes kids have a more difficult time expressing their emotions verbally. Depending on their age or their personality, maybe they're just not very verbally attuned to doing that. So there are a couple other ways to know what's going on inside of a child. A lot of therapists and clergy engage in what's called play therapy. And that is where you give the child some toys. And one really good way of doing this is giving them a piece of paper and some crayons and have them draw the situation. And you can see by the drawing what they're thinking. If they're drawing absolute mayhem and death everywhere and everybody's crying and everybody's sad, well, they might not be verbalizing that, but you can see in their picture the extent of their emotions. Or if they're drawing things that look very angry and slashes through their paper, or if they draw their whole family over on one side of the paper and just themselves in a far corner, then maybe they're feeling lonely or isolated or cut off from their family or their friends or their school. So you can see a lot by what they're drawing, and therapists use that technique a lot. Or you can give them some toys like Legos or little tiny people-like toys. Sometimes therapists use this in a sand tray so that there's like a sandbox kind of a thing and different toys that they can play with in the sandbox. You might have a sandbox in your house if you have little kids, but if not, if you don't have that, that's fine. Give them some toys on a carpet or a table, and you'll see by how the toys interact what's going on. You know, right after 9/11 happened, so many kids were in therapist's office taking things and saying, this is a plane, and crashing it into a lamppost or a desk or something that represented a building. It's because they were reenacting over and over and over again those planes crashing into the Twin Towers. Why? Because they were trying to process the situation in their mind. Now, what happened, though, was kids kept seeing this event on the news over and over and over and over. And so it processed in a child's brain like it kept happening, like it wasn't just a one-time event. So I would caution you to not have the news on too much around the kids. They might be hearing this tragedy, but it might not sit in their brain the same way it sits in an adult brain. It might seem magnified and amplified even more than it already is. And we already know that it's a really serious situation. But we want children to feel safe. We want them, if you're from a Christian or spiritual perspective, to know that there is a God who accompanies them, who loves them, who takes care of them, who will eventually see this thing through, who walks beside them, who will never let them go, who will always love them no matter what. And eventually down the road, if somebody dies that they know, which is really tragic and unfortunate, I tell children at that point that it's okay to grieve and cry, but God is with them still and with their loved one still. And ultimately their loved one is okay. You know, sometimes during this pandemic, we've been joking about being home with our kids, you know, and how hard it is. And we've seen some pretty funny comedy routines and things like that. And I get that. And comedy is good. It alleviates some of the stress and anxiety that we feel. And yes, many of us are not teachers by nature, and we did not want to be homeschool teachers particularly, and that's just not our calling. And we might be frustrated with Common Core math and all of those things. And that's funny. But I would suggest you keep that to the adults, you know, that you don't show too much of that to the kids, because you don't want them to already feel like their world is upended as they're not in school or their regular routine, or away from their friends. They're hearing about this anxious virus going on. You don't want to add to all of that they're driving their parents crazy, that their very existence in their own home is a burden. I mean, how sad. We want our children to know that they are loved, that they are treasured, that they will be cared for by the adults in the room, because they obviously don't have the wherewithal to care for themselves quite yet, or they wouldn't be dependents. So let's let them know and give them the opportunity also for a spiritual lesson, which is deeply important, that they are treasured by God, that they are a beloved child of God, and that they are cared for by the God that made them. I hope this helps. I know it's not easy being with children 24/7 if it's not what you're used to, but imagine yourself as a child. Imagine now all of the anxieties you fear, all the confusion, all the questions unanswered, and imagine feeling all of that as just a little kid. So go to the kids in your life and give them some comfort, give them some joy. It's okay if you miss a Common Core math session. They'll figure all that out as they need to. but let's love the kids now and give them some peace and some comfort. You might even want to pray with them, not only for them, but with them, and show them a model of prayer, asking God to care for this world in need right now. God bless you all. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.